Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Conversations in Pop Culture, where I have with me Dave Franchini, who is the executive editor from Zenescope. So, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, man. Nah, it's cool. I think this is like my first like live interview besides the ones we do on our streams. So
Yeah,
this is like definitely a little nerve-wracking.
it's weird for me because I watch all those streams, and now it's kind of the roles are reversed a little bit. And I know that you told this story on one of the live streams, but how did you even get into Xanascope? Because you've been there for 10, 11 years at this point.
Yeah, 11 years. It's interesting. I mean, like I have a bachelor's in computer science. Not that that matters now because it's been 11 years and computers have way gone like all that technology's gone way past me. But I mean, yeah, it started out like uh, I needed an internship. And at the time, I just discovered Zenescope at like Wizard World, Philadelphia. And I went on their website to buy something, and their website wasn't good at all. So I went to go click to buy like a Sinbad trade, and it wound up skipping on me because it was still loading. And I clicked the MySpace link, and I was like, "What the hell?" And then the MySpace like came up, and like I was like, "Oh, I didn't know that MySpace." I'm looking on it, and this is back when MySpace was a thing. And then I see in their little blog post like internships, and I was like, "Oh, that's cool. I need an internship." I clicked on it. They didn't like they needed somebody. I don't even know what they needed. I forget what it was, but it wasn't anything with computers. So I just messaged them. I was like, you know what, screw it. And I was like, hey, do you guys need a computer intern? Like, I need an internship to graduate. You guys are close. Like, this would be cool. And then they're like, yeah, sure. Message back, Ralph Tedesco. And I was like, all right. So I sent an email to Ralph, and I was like, dear Mr. Tedesco, like, I was like, do you have an internship available? I need one. And he's like, yeah, sure. What? Yeah, come on in for an interview. I was like, all right, awesome. So like, kind of started from there. Like it was an accident. Like I was trying to buy a Sinbad trade, and I wound up finding that they needed an internship. But then it like yeah, it just kind of went from there. Like I went and bought a suit because I was like, I should get a suit. I'm probably gonna go on a bunch of interviews. I'm not gonna get this first one. And then I bought went to Men's Warehouse, bought a suit, went in to the office, and I'm sitting there, and there's like a case of Miller Lite sitting in front of me, and I was like, oh man, I gotta get a job here. This would be cool. And like Ralph comes out and he laughs at me, and he's like, oh, I should have told you we're kind of casual here. Like he was laughing that I'm wearing a suit, and in my head I'm just like, you suck. But nah, but it was like it was cool. Like I went in there and I just kind of did the interview, and I guess I did well, where I was the only person that came in for an interview, one or the other, probably the only person. But
So,
yeah,
before we talk about that, did you get your trade, though, that you were looking for?
Sinbad one, yeah, I eventually got it. I mean, I don't even think I went back to the site to buy it. I was like, oh, maybe I'll buy it when I get there. But yeah, I
So,
eventually got it. Yeah.
so to even talk about that on a more serious note, so now you come in and it's sort of a computer internship, it's sort of not. And what were you exactly doing? And then how did that progress
Uh,
into you
yeah,
becoming.
it was a lie. It was a lie. It wasn't like a computer internship. It was like I came in and I set up their computer network. Like I set up their like a network for their computers to all share files all, like to each other, and then I set up a printer, and that was the extent of their computer needs. And that was it. So after that, I basically did whatever they needed. I worked in the warehouse, which at the time was our smaller office, which is like a kitchen, and it was like we didn't have a kitchen. It was like where we kept all our books. So it was like I worked there with like the warehouse manager at the time, which was Glenn. Um, like yeah, so he kind of taught me like everything about like I was pulling every book, I was pulling books, pulling orders, like basically like when shipments came in, we'd stock up. So I was learning that like I was just kind of doing that stuff, and then like I mean I didn't really have any computer stuff to go to, so like when I had to do my I had to do like a 7 page paper on my internship, and I set up a printer and a network. I had to really use my imagination and make that 7 pages long, and somehow I got my internship credits from it. Like I kind of just like I just didn't lie. I just expanded in a lot of words what I did. Yeah.
And so now you're doing all this stuff and you're really being a jack of all trades and you complete your internship and then I'm assuming you graduated. And then
Yeah.
when did you start? working, or how did that all come about? Because going from an internship into a work environment is very different.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of it just kind of naturally happened. Like we went to like I was doing the intern stuff and I was doing whatever, and then we went to Wizard World Philly that year. Like it came up Wizard World Philly, and they wanted me to work the booth, so I was at the booth, but like I can't sit still. So like when you're at the show, like people walk by and all that stuff. And I remember my first time at the Zenescope booth. It's like sometimes it's a little intimidating to go up because they would either have like models, cosplay models at the booth, and then all the covers are mostly like scantily clad women, like just kind of like to draw your eye in and get you like into like the fairy tales and all that stuff. So like I remember walking up the first time I ever went to the booth and nobody talked to me, and I was just like, all right, this is weird. I want to buy books, but this is strange. So like when I was in the reversal of that, where I was behind the booth, I made sure to talk to anybody that walked by. I was like, hey, have you ever read our books? Like, hey, like check out this stuff, because I wanted them to get excited about the books as much as I was. And it kind of just like I guess I did well selling there, because then like the next week, or like the next week or two, like Joe called me in his office and he's like, hey, like 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 it seems like you're in the sales and all that stuff. I was like, no, not at all. I don't really like sales. But like he's like, well, we have an opening for sales. Like if you want to take it. And I was just kind of thinking about it. Like I was like, I liked computer science. I liked computers, but I'm like, I didn't want to wear a suit all day. I didn't want to do coding. I didn't like, and I had a passion for comics, and especially like the Zenescope books. So I was like, you know what? I'll take this job. I was like, I can do it. If I don't like it, I can always go back and try to find a job in like computer stuff. And that's what I wound up like taking over, like doing like our in-house sales, like calling up retailers and getting them to buy back issue stuff, buying our exclusives, and kind of trying to build up our customer base that way. And that's how I kind of jumped from intern to sales. It was kind of like based on them needing sales and what I did during the Wizard affiliate.
And then going from sales, you eventually sort of wound up on, I guess, assistant editor and in that sector of the business. And so, how did that come about?
I mean, that's the thing is, it was just everything just kind of fed into each other. Like it was just like, all right, let's do sales, and I would do sales, but then I'd always pitch them ideas, not for stories, but it was more like sales ideas, marketing ideas, like ideas and like things that would make me excited about getting the books, like when we like the secret exclusives that we used to do, and like the birthday exclusives we do for VIPs, like things like that, things that like resonated me as a collector, as a fan, and like so like as I was in sales, I was kind of in a little bit of everything. Like we would do trade shows. I would help out in shipping. I would in sales at one point it was only me in sales, and like so I would take my orders, I'd put them in myself, and I'd go pull them myself and pack them myself, and then me and Glenn would pack them together. But it was just like you were kind of like doing your own thing, and so it slowly evolved to a point where it got to they had an opening in editorial, which is funny because like when I first started, when I was offered the sales job, I was like, oh well, yeah, like do sales for a little bit, and then we'll move you into editorial when we can. And then like 5 years went by, and I was like, I seen people like editors come and go, and I'm like, I can do editing, and they're like, no, you do sales. And then it's so like, and then finally it was like getting to the point where Ralph was gonna move out to LA to do our film and television, and they needed someone to basically come in and like at the time I didn't even know it was takeover editing. It was just like, hey, come on and be an editor. And I was like, you know what? I want to do editing. I want to do the comic books. Let me do it. And then like so like I didn't even know I was running it. And then I found out like 2 years later I was running it. Like I was just kind of making sure the books were getting done. I was making sure like the art, like me and Chris, the art director, were picking out the art teams. We were making sure the art teams were getting like picked for the books. All the covers were getting done. Like I was booking all the covers. And the exclusives. So, but like it took like 2 years to like before they told me like, oh, we like I did, like one day it was just like, well, you're running this, and I'm like, I didn't know I was running this. Like it just kind of like happened. Yeah,
Yeah, and I kind of want to break that down because that's a lot right there. And I think one of
I
the
know.
things that people don't understand about comics is that there's the writer, the artist, sometimes there's the cover artist, there's a letterer in play, but also there's an editor in
Yeah.
play. And the editor is kind of the coach, for lack of a better word, to use a football analogy to some
Right.
degree. And so, what is an editor, and what are they supposed to do, and what do you do with the books that you're editing
Um,
and in charge
I
of?
don't. I don't know what like other companies do because I've never experienced what other companies actually do for editing. But I've hired other freelance editors over the time, like that used to work for Marvel, used to work for DC, and when they hear what we do, they're like, "You guys do a lot," like comparison. So, but I don't know if it's like if that's like what it is now. But I mean, for normal like a regular editor, because we have two editors here, Rachel and Kelly, that they're currently working from home, but like they're pretty much they run point in all the books. Like I help edit a book or two here and there, but they basically do all the other books. And I'll get them the art teams with Chris, like me and Chris will like, talk together. We'll get them art teams. We'll get them all situated. So for them, like what an editor is doing is basically they take like the scripts will come in like all right. So there's a lot. Like I'll walk it down our pyramid scheme of editing and writing. So like basically Joe, Ralph, and myself will go away and we'll do a writer's retreat and we'll come up with our stories and concepts and ideas and outlines for what we want to do for like the next 6 months or 8 months. And then from there, we'll either pick out what we want to write, what we want somebody else to write, and then and then it comes back to me. So like I'll take our outlines and like I'll actually show you. There's some of them on the wall. So like we'll basically write them down like that, and then I take them, I come back, I type them all up, and then if I'm writing it, then I save it off to the side, I get it for myself. If Ralph's writing it or Joe's writing it, I type it up, send them what we talked about, they start writing it. If it's another writer, I start thinking of like most of the time we'll think like while we're coming up with the ideas, I'll start thinking of the writers I think are good for those stories, and then we'll pick out, we'll contact those writers. Hey, are you available? Do you want to do that story? We outline like sometimes we outline a lot, sometimes we outline just the bullet points. And so, like from there, it goes from like taking the outlines, getting them to writers, and then getting the scripts in. Then I'll read all the scripts and I'll pass them on. Like I'll give my notes, pass them to Joe and Ralph. If they have any notes, they send them back to me. And then whatever we get the final script in. That's when I take it and give it to the editors. And then the editors take it and they give it out to their art teams with their deadlines. And that's really the process from idea to script. And then when the editor takes it, they'll read through it. They'll highlight references they need to find. They'll find like things that they need to look up. They'll think questions that they need to ask the writer to get clarification. And then they go to the artist. And so like most of our books will have a penciler who also inks themselves most of the time. Sometimes we have an inker, but like a lot of times, like really to keep our budgets low, we don't really go. We try to get artists that pencil and ink their own stuff, or we find a team that kind of keeps us under budget. So we have the penciler, inker, then you have the colorist, and then you have the letterer. So the editor has to basically create deadlines for the penciler, inker, the colorist, and the letterer, and they normally fall within like 5 days, 7 days of each other. So it's like, because normally when the pages are coming in, like while the ink pages are coming in, so like the artist will send in layouts based on the script pages. Then the editors go through it. They're like, okay, this matches up with this. This doesn't match up exactly. Are you okay with it, to the writer? And the writer's like, no, change this, or yes, this is okay. And they move forward. So we go through all the layouts. And then once the layouts are approved, they start on pencils and inks. And depending on their process. But yeah, so they go to the line art and they make their way through the line art. And then the same process goes to the editor, goes to the writer, and they're like, all right, did you draw what was in the layout? Is this what was in the script? And they match it up. And then once it's approved, the colorist gets it. And then it's that process over and over again for the colorist and the inker, because then the colorist will do the same thing, send it in, the editor and the writer will look at it, like, yeah, we're hitting it. And they go through that until the whole book's done. And then at the end, we hit the letter up and like, hey, look, here's a ton of pages. Like, we need this in a day now. Like, we'll be like, we normally try to like map out the letter when we map out the artist and the colorist. I'm like, hey, we're starting a book now. We need this book. We need a letter proof of it, which is just a PDF of all the pages put together with the letters by a certain date. And then the letters some letters, they'll wait until it's all done. Some of them will work while the pages are coming in and just start lettering it to stay ahead. And then they send the PDF to the editor and the writer. And then the editor, the writer, and we send around. Like, we actually were smaller. Like, we don't produce a ton of books. So we as an editorial team, we edit each proof. So like, if Kelly gets a book in, she'll send it to me and Rachel and the writer, and we'll all go through it to make sure there's like we're trying to catch notes like spelling, grammar, art, like things that might have been missed, or like, oh my god, what's that? Like there's two left hands or something like that, which has happened, and you're like, oh crap, we got to get it fixed. So like after all that, then we go back to the letter, like, all right, here's the notes, or here's everything that's fine. Like upload your pages now, and we take that, put it on our printer site, and then the editorial team goes through it again for final proofing, make sure nothing's missed, and then it goes to print, and then it comes in. So that's like that's our process from idea to printed. I know I talk a lot.
And one of the things that probably makes this even more complicated is that Zenescope now has a massive, rich history, especially with characters like Robin Hood and Van Helsing and Callie and Alice. I think are kind of the richest out of the bunch at the moment. So when you're going even as an editing team and script wise, and even communicating with writers, how do you make sure that they're up to par and they understand? Because sometimes what happens is that, and I think Robin Hood is a great example of this, where you have different writers working on the trilogy of Robin Hood and they're playing off of each other, those books.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, for the Robin, it's tough. It's kind of tough. I mean, like basically for all of our writers, we have a drive that we share with them that has every PDF of every book that we do. So it's basically for them to read it if they want to read it and catch up. But like say for like it was before Robin Hood, we'll send them like either in the outlines we'll map out exactly like okay like here's their relation to these characters, and kind of I'll go a little bit in there and be like, okay, like the last time we saw this character was here, last time we saw this character was here, last time we saw this character is here, and this is how they are with Robin. So it's like, but then also some of them might want to read the books beforehand. So like we'll just send them like the folder with all the books, and it's like, hey, here you go, you can read them all. Some of them like to prepare that way. Some of them like to kind of just roll in, know what the notes are, and then like some of them will go in and be like, here's a script, and then I'll get it and I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Like this character doesn't do that, so we can't have that person do that, so we have to adjust it. So it's a lot of work, but it kind of becomes second nature because like I've read everything we've ever done, and I actually make any editor that works for us read anything we've ever done. Like Kelly and Rachel, I don't think they're done it yet, but like they've been working on it for the past like year and a half, 2 years, and because we have a lot of books, but it's like it's more just so you can be like, oh, I've seen that, I know what they're talking about, like, and it's really just like kind of immersing yourself in the universe. And the good thing is like we're only 15 years old, so you can read everything we've ever done. We're not 75 years old or 80 years old, and you're like, that's impossible, I can't read everything here. Like it's, but for us, they're like you can read every Robin Hood story. Like I think we only at the end of Robin Hood Justice we'll be at 82 Robin Hood issues, and then at the end of Van Helsing versus League of Monsters, and then the one shot after the annual after that we'll be at like 49 issues leading up to our 50th issue. So like we have a little, like it's a little easier for us to kind of go through it all or even get it to a writer.
And things get even more complicated with your company and the company you work for, because Xanascope does something that other publishers don't do, where you guys have a lot of covers, and you have two tiers, as I like to describe, where you have 3 to 5 regular covers for each issue that comes out, and then you also have massive exclusives. And so I guess my question is that, and you booked a lot of covers, and that's kind of your area of specialty, and we're going to talk about a special book that I'm going to show and tell a little story about it. And I have a feeling that there's a few books it might be. There's a few books it might be. And it's not a Z-rated cover, everybody, so hold your horses. But what makes a good cover for starters?
I mean, that's tough because art is, you can't, like not everybody has the same viewpoint on a same piece of art. Like you might look at like a splatter on the wall and you're like, amazing. And then some people are like, that's the splatter on the wall. Like, so like what we do in terms of covers, like we have tiers of covers, but it's not tiers based on like skill level or marketability. It's more based on like All right, so we normally do like we do about 3 to 4 covers. Like we used to do like 5, and we've been toning it down a little bit because it's hard to collect every cover. But also too, like a lot of we look at it because people will be like, oh, you guys do a lot of covers. I can't keep up with it. It's like we get that, but at the same time, we look at it too as giving a lot of different artists and art styles a chance to breathe that normally wouldn't get like a daylight. Like you wouldn't see it at another company. So like we try to give as many artists and many different viewpoints as possible. So like our A covers are always like our iconic like mainstream covers that we kind of go like it would be more like your DC, Marvel, superhero type covers. And then our B covers are normally like the action covers or they're like a monster cover. And then the C covers would be our pinups, and then the D cover could be a mix of any of those three. So that's how we kind of determine our covers. And then we look at the sales too. Like I look at the sales every week on our diamond thing, and you can see what artists sell more, what covers sell more, what like if an A cover sells more than the B cover, or if it does, like what artist is on there, because you can see certain artists sell more than other artists, and it's just what it is. And so we got to be mindful of both, like making really cool art, but also the sales end of it. Like, okay, what do the fans want? What do we see them actually moving to? Like we might think this artist and this art is amazing, but our fans aren't reacting it to the way that we are. And that's a lot of the thing too, is like it's a lot of my like my input on like, okay, like I want to see this cover artist on this cover, but then we get something cool in, but then the fans don't react to it the same way. So you're like, it's a little disheartening, but you're like, okay, how can we work around that? And like, okay, maybe we put this artist more on monsters. Their monsters are crazy and they sell better, so you can push them towards that. And then we have the collectible covers. So like you have your shelf covers, then you have the collectible covers, and the collectible covers are more like
this.
Yeah, like a Keith Garvey one. Yep, it's a vintage one. But yeah, I mean, like you have the collectible covers, and those are more like the way we do some of them. It's really just we go more like into our company with the pinups and they're more the eye catching.
Good girl art.
Like
good
ones
girl
that
art.
stand away from the rest of them. What's up?
Good girl art. Is what it's
called.
Yeah,
I mean, it's basically we go heavy into the pinups, and we kind of lean into what we're known for, and that's pretty much like what we do with the collectible covers. And we're always looking for artists to kind of like push it a little bit further, but not in like a sexual way, but more in like tonally like catching you, like, oh my god, like that's so cool, I need that. And it's like to instill that like where you would be at a convention or whatever, and it's almost like I need that, I need to have that. And that's exactly what we kind of want when we see these covers. When they come in, you're like, oh my god, right away you can tell, you're like, that people are going to love this, like they're on that. And then so we kind of just we shift towards like certain artists that are stronger in just doing a single character that can hit some of the concepts that we come up with. Because when we do our writers summit, we literally come up with all of our collectible covers for the year in like a day. So we'll map out like 12 months of collectible covers, and we'll be super exhaustible. We'll spend a whole day doing that, coming up with all the different concepts and the ideas, like the cereal box type stuff and things like that. And it's just we plan that out ahead of time. And yeah, it's a little bit different. But then also too, as you'll see going forward, like the way we're shifting our books, we're gonna do a little bit less miniseries and gonna focus more on one-shot books, like one-shot character books, to kind of give you a beginning, middle, and end in each story. So it's like every issue can become a jumping on point. So you're like, oh my god, I can read this and not have to read 15 years worth of content. So we'll be bringing in some of our collectible cover artists into those regular covers to kind of bridge the gap back and forth, to kind of like get the guys that only buy the collectible books to pick up like some of the other books, to be like, oh, I want to check that out. I love this cover artist. Let's see what's inside this book.
And so before we talk about that, I do want to talk about this entire cover world, because I got to mention a few names. Ebas is one of the guys that you always go to. Chazu's, DNA, David Nakayama, Dawn McTeague, Sabine Rich, Sean Chen maybe is in that list, and Jason Metcalf. You mentioned Van Helsing, and he's doing a 50th issue cover for that. That's going to be coming out sooner rather than later. But I think there are two, and you kind of mentioned it a little bit, that Zenescope does better than I think almost every other company, and you find new artists that don't get attention and that are kind of hiding under a rock. And I think under your, I guess, term or reign as the executive editor, you brought in two people, and that's Sun Kumanaki and Keith Garvey, who I think before Zenescope, very few people knew who they were. And so let's talk about Sun, because how'd you go about finding her? And she was on my podcast, my other show, and she's coming out tonight or tomorrow morning for those who want to check that out. And we talk a little bit about this as well. But I'm just curious about that.
I mean, like, sometimes it's hard to remember, like, when you, like, the way you find some people, like, because like, a lot of times it's weird. Like, I'll find people just like, I'll Google our covers, like some of our cover artists, to kind of like, when I'm trying to book a concept, I'm like, well, like, and I try to match the artist to the concepts, and I try to be like, okay, like, this person's really strong at drawing, like an iconic monster, things like that. So sometimes I'll like Google our cover artist, and I'll see other artists pop up that resemble our artist, or that are like, or like they just get like they get mistagged, and I'm like, oh my god. But with Sun, it was actually Jamie Tyndall. I think she used to color some of Jamie's covers, like years ago, and I remember the name, and I was like, oh, she's a really good colorist. And I think I might even reached out back then, like asking about doing colors. And then it just never came to anything. Like, I mean, a lot of times it sucks because like I'll reach out to a lot of artists, and like we'll wind up talking, but then sometimes it's like a million things get piled on, and you just forget. Like you're like, oh my god, I forgot about that artist or something like that. But with Sun, it was just like I think I was looking up one of our artists, and I seen one of her art pop up, and I was like, that's really cool. And then I went on to her page, and I just started looking through her other stuff. I was like, this stuff's awesome. And I'm like, and nobody's really like using her. I was like, you know what? Like, why don't you? Like, so I put her on, I think, the Black Knight secret exclusive, and I was like, let's try her out. Like, I mean, like I was like, let's see. I mean, like, we don't really have artists like this right now, so we don't know how our fans will react. So we kind of like, I was like, all right, just put her on the cover. I mean, this is, and it was also, it's funny enough, it's a cover that, like, it's one of our more rare covers, and she's one of the like more, like, if you look at it, it's like she's rare out there. Like, she wasn't, not a lot of people were using her at the time, and like it just kind of worked out that way. I was like, hey, would you want to do like a cover for us? And it just kind of spun from there. She did it, like, we liked it. It was good. And then I was like, you know what, I really like that artist, and like I really liked her style, so I just started kind of like testing it out a little bit more, putting her on like the New York Oktoberfest covers, and just kind of like, and because we do a lot of covers, so it's like sometimes you run out of like artists, and you're like, you know what, I really want to try this artist now. Like, and sometimes being stretched too thin gives us a chance to try people that we normally might have put on, like, we might not have put her on an exclusive. And it was like, you know what, I really like her style, I think she can do it. And then she did it, and I was like, these are awesome. And then it just kind of just kept snowballing. Like, all right, let's put her on this. Let's try this. And then same thing with Keith. Like, Keith, we tried him out on, actually had him on regular C covers. I think he did like Cinderella Serial Killer Princess. It was one of his first covers. Hellchild, The Unholy. It was like I forget what issue, like 2 or 3. But like he started doing, we had him start doing regular covers because like I didn't really see any comic book work from him. So I was like, oh, try these out. And then it slowly evolved into just like, you know what, these are like, we saw how the sales were going. I'm like, all right, we got to put them on the collectible covers. And it just kind of like, we just kept building on that. It was like, all right, people like it, people want it, and we just kept going towards that.
And I showed the Keith cover, but I do want to show this cover. And I know this cover has something special with you because Sun was speaking about it. And when Sun was designing this cover, and this is inside baseball, supposedly the rose petals were your idea.
Well, I won't take the credit for that. That was actually Ralph's idea. Ralph, like, I remember we're at the writers thing, and Ralph's like, all right, well, like, we're talking about we'll do the Valentine's Day one. We'll have her with a rose. And then Ralph's like, yeah, and then like we'll have rose petals falling like snow. And I remember me and Joe are looking at him like, all right, yeah, sure, whatever, okay, that sounds good. Like, and like we were just like, yeah, like that was a crazy idea. I was like, I put it down as a note. And then we sent it to her, and then when it came in, we're like, "That was awesome, man! Like that was a cool idea." So I can't take the credit for that. That was Ralph. Like, that was Ralph saying like that, and we were just like, "Okay, like that can be cool," but like we weren't like sold on it. And then it came through. We're like, "This is awesome."
And then we're gonna go to the back of this book because I got this book with VIP points, everybody, and you can sign up for VIP at Zenescope.com. So we got to get that plug in.
That's right.
And this book is sold out, and I actually got this book graded in a 9.8 with my VIP points because I spent a lot of money at Xanascope. And I was super excited. Didn't think I was going to get it. Apparently nobody was going after it. It was a mistake that I didn't buy this book raw, and I'm lucky that I got this book. And also,
Well,
while
we
we're
appreciate
talking
the
about
support.
VIP, this just came, and this was one of the CGC books that they offered in one of their exclusives. That Zenescope doesn't normally CGC anything for anybody. You do that on your own with CGC, but during one of their virtual cons, if you bought this book, which is the Sun Kumanaki, and minus the glare, that's not part of the book,
I see my
you,
head.
you got that they actually CGC'd it and sent it out to CGC, and this came back as a 9.8, which is really great.
That's
So
awesome.
wanted to throw that one in there too. Now, having said all that, I do want to talk about something else now. That's sort of your baby, and this was also bought on a virtual con
Nice.
because it's
That's what I
signed
like to see.
by you. So let's talk about Belle Beast Hunter. And I know we're jumping a little bit and skipping a few
That's cool.
things because you've written a lot of stuff for Xanascope, but I think this is kind of your baby. And the way I describe this, and Ralph or Joe might shoot me, and it's sort of a Pokemon reference, is that this is kind of the generation 4 or 5 of Xanascope, with Belle being introduced as a new character and
Yeah.
very much military, Batman-esque, monster hunter-esque. So where did this idea come from? Because I really enjoy
Oh.
Belle.
Oh, I'm glad you like. I'm glad you like her. Yeah, I mean, like, I do have a special place in my heart for Belle. Like, she was my first character I pitched to like Joe and Ralph that they approved. Um, so like, yeah, I love writing her, and I like to put a little bit of me in her. Like some of the things that she's thinking are just like days ago. I'm like, oh, what would I do in that situation? But I mean, like, where it came from was like, I remember one day it was me and Joe. We were sitting in our conference room, and we're kind of like mapping out some stuff coming up, and we're like, all right, we have to do an arm. He wanted to do an armed forces book, and I was like, all right, like we need to. We used to do like the swimsuits, and we put like throwaway stories in there, like things that were just like, oh, the villains and heroes playing volleyball with each other, and I'm like, I don't like reading that as a fan. Like, I want something in continuity. I want something cool that makes it worth buying this, not only just for the pinups, but you get a really cool in continuity story. So he was like, yeah, he's like, maybe he's like, yeah, we can do something. Maybe we'll do something like a military museum or something like that, because it was the armed forces book. I was like, that's a cool idea. I was like, he's like, oh, who should we put in there? I was like, do you care if we do like a new character? Because in my head, I instantly like Belle popped in my head, and he's like, oh, we can try that. I was like, all right, can I write like a pitch up tonight and give it to you? And I went home and I researched so much about like military stuff, and like, and I just kind of like I just had something that clicked in my head, and I sent it to him the next day, and it was only like 5 pages, 6 pages. That's all the story was. The first Belle story. It's like 5 pages, and he's like, yeah, I like it. It's cool. And I was like, all right, cool. I was like, I guess he likes it. Like, he didn't say no. He didn't say it was dumb. Like, I was like, all right, awesome. And then after that, like, I wrote that 5 page story, and then I started like thinking of other stuff to kind of build off of it. And I'm like, oh, well, we can do so much for it. And I kind of came up with this like this pitch for this character that like hunts monsters, and she's a generational military, but also generational monster hunter. And then I pitched that to like Joe and Ralph, and they're like, yeah, that sounds awesome. And they're like, at one point I had like the Beast as her brother, and they're like, well, let's not make her blood related in case we need like a love interest later or something like that. And I was like, all right, half brother, like step brother, like whatever. I was like, so I kind of adjusted that, and then like, yeah, they kind of let me just go crazy with it. Like, I kind of just mapped it out, did the series, and like, it was just something that I wanted to tell, because like I look at her as kind of like a little bit of Batman mixed with Spider-Man, like dialogue, like where she says things sarcastic and funny to like, or tries to be funny even though she's annoying to the people she's bantering with and fighting with, but internally she's having self-doubt, and she's just kind of like, I hope this works, like, because she's only been like, she's taken over this thing, but like, it's not like she wasn't meant to take it over as soon as she did. So like, it was always that. But like, yeah, it just kind of spun from there, and it was just like, all right, how do we play with the Beauty and the Beast mythology stuff, and then just keep building onto it and building onto it, and like, we got some really like now, like, some of the stuff coming up, like I'm super excited about, like all the new characters and all the new things that are tying into it, which can't share anything yet, but it's coming up.
So to bridge the gap a little bit, because we could talk about Belle Oath of Thorns, which I believe the graphic novel of that is coming out sometime in the fall. Of that 6 issues, from my understanding. So if you missed the single issues, it's a mini series that's sort of the sequel to Belle Beast Hunter, and it kind of fills in the gap of what is coming out.
Yeah, it takes
So,
place like 11 seconds after the end of Bell Beast Hunter. Like it's like 11 seconds later it starts off.
and a lot of stuff's going on, and I don't want to ruin too much of that because you kind of need to read Bell Beast Hunter to understand what's going on with that. But let's just say it's chaotic
A little
in
bit.
a good way, to put it bluntly and nicely. And I'm not going to press you, but there is some Bell stuff coming out in the next few months, and
Yeah.
so clearly that's going to be continuing the story, from my understanding.
Well, the way we're gonna do some of our stuff coming up, like we have Bell Beast Hunter, and then we have Bell Oath of Thorns, and then we did Bell versus Black Knight was the first one shot. So we're actually gonna try. We're gonna do Bell in like 8 monthly one shots. So it's gonna be kind of like how we did Robin Hood I Love New York, where they're standalone stories with different characters, different villains, different like situations, but they slightly tie to each other, building on one another. So like you can read Bell Horns of the Minotaur that's coming up later, and not have to read Bell Hearts and Minds or Bell, uh, like Bell any like so like like each one's kind of like it's a jumping on point, but also too building on to the mythology of like stuff coming up.
And so I want to table Bell there because I don't
But
want to
yeah,
push
I
it.
mean, yeah, like right now, like we have Hearts and Minds being worked with Gretel. That should be pretty cool. I hope. I hope. But yeah, we're getting pages of that, and it's looking awesome. And then after that, it's the Horns of the Minotaur. And then after that, I can't tell you because we haven't solicited it yet.
And there's some cool stuff coming from what I've seen and what I've seen in certain areas. May or may not, I'm not going to say anything because I don't know what I can and can't say. But I do want to change the topic, and I think
Okay.
Zenescope was kind of ahead of the curve a little bit. And I know it isn't exactly your area of expertise, but I think you as a company have adapted, arguably one of the best, with your virtual
Oh,
con.
thank you.
And I think that for me as a collector and for somebody who buys and sells and trades books, and I'm open about it, you know, and I don't think that anybody at your company totally minds that per se. I'm a big advocate of Collectors Club, and I can attest to that there is value there. What do you feel is going to be the change in the comic world, either from the editorial standpoint or even just from how books are sold or how business is conducted? Because clearly COVID-19 has changed the game, at least for the next year or so.
No, I mean it definitely has. Yeah, I mean, for us on the editorial side and writing side, we were already in the process of changing over, doing a lot more standalone stories. So that's like we were kind of like already we were already doing that. Like that was the plan coming into this year anyway. So that's not changing much. And then plus, like the thing is, you can edit from anywhere in the world. Like, cause all our artists work all over the place. We have Chrome that works in Australia, and I'm on Facebook all day, basically just contacting him or Paul Green or any of our artists like Igor Vitorino or Alessio Mariani. Like,
Sebastian
so
Chen
we're
is it?
Sebastian Chang, yeah,
He's in the
yeah,
Philippines and people don't know who he is, and he's great.
like his colors are ridiculous. Like him and John Royal and Jagdish have been killing it with those covers. Um, but yeah, I mean, like so, like for editorial side, nothing's changing much. I mean, it's more just like, all right, if there's an outbreak or if somebody gets sick or something like that happens, that'll change and we'll have to adapt. But like we've always dealt with that kind of stuff where we've had people like who've passed away in the middle of books, or we've had people that have like dropped out because of financial reasons, or they like so like that won't change as much on the editorial side. For the sales side and the business side, I mean, really, it's become more virtual stream, more website, and more like pushing and supporting the retailers, like getting our books to more retailers and making sure that they know we exist, because there's a lot of retailers that still don't carry our books, and we want to also appreciate the ones that do carry our books and that have been and pushing us for years. It's like we want to make sure that you guys are going to stick around with us as we go, and that's one of the biggest things we're doing now, because like there's probably not going to be conventions for at least another year. Just like in reality, there's probably not, like, you're not going to get 50 to 100,000 people in one building for a while. So we're trying to adapt to that, and like a lot of that was our business model for a while, was like do 30 conventions a year. We'd go to physically like 40 conventions a year. I think one year I did like 28 myself, and I was just like, that was back when I did sales, and I'm like, that was crazy. But like now with the virtual streams and like getting people like and just seeing how people are still excited about the products, they can get more excited. And now we can actually build on it and give you more background information on how the books are made, the process behind the concepts and the writing and the art. Like I think that's cool, even from a fan point of view. I'd want to watch. I want to watch that stuff. Like I like the other day we did our BeachCon, and and it was the like even with Sean Chen talking and Jason Metcalf talking, and when Son Sabine and Dawn were like talking with Ralph, like I felt like I was at a Comic Con because I was getting to hear them talk about the craft, and like I thought that was so cool. Like it made me feel like excited, like for the first time, and like these virtual cons are just as exciting for us as it is for you guys, because like we get to interact with people that we don't normally get to interact with, and we get that fun, and it's really just like it's evolved, and it's hard to explain, but like I think we have plans to do a lot more virtual content besides just the conventions of like, hey, guess what we have this month. It's like, hey, we're gonna try some new things out coming up. Like Ralph's been like coming up with a few ideas for like I don't want to spoil it yet because he hasn't anything set in stone, but just some things that he wants to start running, like that we might do on like random Fridays and random Wednesdays to kind of just keep interacting, where it's not just like, hey, buy this. It's more like, hey, let's talk and hang out and do this stuff and kind of entertain you and take the entertainment part of our company and do that.
Yeah, well, I just want to make this clear about BeachCon. Everybody was great except Dawn was misbehaving during that entire thing. Clearly, clearly, that needs to be stated. I just want to make sure that I am not associated with that. I just need to make it clear. It's called distancing. But in all seriousness, we've been talking. I know you got somewhat of a hard deadline, but I do want to give you an opportunity because there's so much more to talk about. But I do want to give you an opportunity, and we're going to eventually have to redo this again at some point and add to it, hopefully.
Yeah, I'm always available, man.
And I do want to give you an opportunity to promote yourself, where people can find your books, because you got a lot of stuff coming out. I mean, I know that 3 or 4 of your books just dropped, actually, that you've worked on.
Well,
you missed.
The pandemic build up to it.
and also, where can people find Zenescope and support Zenescope? And I know that a virtual con is going to happen in August. I don't know the exact date, but something's going to happen in August. And then VIP is a whole different discussion. If you want to promote VIP and take Jason's job, be my guest.
He might kill me. No, I mean, like, yeah, like, so, like, for me, I mean, it's like as long as you're buying Zenescope, I love being a part of all of it. So, like, even if you don't like Bell or you don't like that stuff, I'm not worried. Like, I'm worried. Like, I want you to like that stuff, but I'm not gonna be like, oh, just only buy Bell. It's like, get everything that you love. Hopefully, everything that we do, you love. I mean, so we have a ton of that stuff coming up. We have a really cool book I'm excited about is Cinderella. She gets to come back because I wrote the Cinderella Serial Killer Princess, and that was probably the most fun I've ever had because it's the most insane thing that's ever like come out of my head that people got to see. So like we're gonna do a Christmas special with that where it's Cinderella versus Krampus. It's kind of like Die Hard mixed with I don't know like a lot of murder. So, well, I mean that's Die Hard already, but like with Cinderella. So like that's coming up. I mean we have the next virtual con for August it's gonna be a cosplay theme con, cosplay con. I think it's August 20th. It's that weekend that it's gonna be. It's the I think the third weekend of August. We've been trying to keep them around the same time every month. So if people want to take off or people like that way, people can organize their schedules around that, and they're not like, oh God, I got like all of a sudden they're doing it the first of this week, and we just did go. So yeah, I think that's August 20th is the weekend for that. VIP, I mean, definitely love more VIPs. Honestly, it's a really cool program where like you get rewarded to like basically buy comic books, but you get rewarded with more comic books and more content. You can get drawn into a comic. There's 2 people getting drawn into the new Bell Hearts and Minds one. There's been a few people that drawn in the Grim Fairy Tales ones throughout. We've had a ton of them drawn, but like that's a really cool thing because like you can either get killed or if you don't want to get killed, you can let us know. And we'll try to slide you in somewhere else and not have you violently murdered. But I mean, yeah, like it's basically every dollar you spend with VIP as a VIP member, it's $100 for a lifetime membership, never expires. So if you buy it one day and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I've been buying for 2 years. How many points do I have? And you're like, oh, like you have 2,000 points. They're like, oh crap, I spent $2,000. But like every dollar you get turns into a point to like trade in for like other products. You can get trades, you can get prints, you can get CGCs, you can get metal comics. I think were offered on there at one point. I don't know if they're doing them now. They were at one point though. Getting drawn into a comic, getting like sketch covers, things like that. And we've tried to rotate them through the years, kind of seeing what people wanted, because sometimes we put things on there and nobody's ever redeemed them. We're like, oh, okay, but like. So yeah, like that right there, you get like the most for your money. Like it was funny because we kind of came up with it originally. It was kind of like Marlboro, like you had the cigarettes where you trade in your UPCs and mix with like U.S. Airways, like their points, and that's how it kind of came to be. And it was like, all right, cool, let's do something cool for the fans and like that are diehard. But I think I covered most.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff, and honestly, if Jason goes through even more of this stuff, and there's a variety of stuff, and it's mentioned every virtual stream, so that's something about it. And also, I think VIP is that I think if you buy VIP in August, I think it goes all the way back to January if you made other purchases. I'm not
Yeah,
exactly sure.
it's retroactive as long as you have like your receipts and stuff like that, and you can just kind of send like, hey, like I bought this, and I'm like, all right, cool, put it in there for points. Even if you, and that's the thing too, like it doesn't just have to be from our website or through like virtual cons or anything like that. Like if you buy it from your local comic book store and you show it and you just send us the receipt of like, I bought these off my local guy, we'll give you points towards that, because like we don't want to pull you from your comic book store. Well, our site and our stream are more for people that don't have a local store near them, or like say they just don't get it, like they can't go in, or they can't get their book somehow, and that's what we're kind of like the backup, the safety net. So like no matter what, you can get our comics. But like yeah, so like that way, if you buy your books every Wednesday from your local store, or you can get your points from us, and we're not like that way you can help push them and also support us.
And I'm just going to say this, I'm part of VIP. I've been part of VIP for, I think, almost 10 months now,
Hey,
10, 11
nice.
months. So I'm relatively new to it. I spent a lot of money on VIP. I redeemed it for something, and your points never expire, and you can tier up with
Yep.
VIP. And when you tier up, you don't lose down your position. So if you spend 2,500 points and you had 3,100, you're not at 600, you're still at 3,100, but you only have 600 points to spend, and you can still make silver, and it's 5,000 to silver, so you have 1,900 more to go. And it's really an amazing program. And then obviously we didn't get to talk about VIP, the
Oop,
event,
froze a
a
little bit.
whole different discussion that would take way too long, but definitely support Zenescope. They do really cool books, and it's not just the good girl art or the bad girl art or the sexy girl on it. There are really good stories behind all of that. And so if you never heard of Zenescope before, I recommend giving it a try. Pick up a trade paperback. I would say is probably the best way how to do it, at least the way I view it, to get into it, and pick up something like Van Helsing or Robin Hood. And I think you'll wind up realizing how amazing it is, and they really do get amazing talent to do stuff. And just to give an example, Chuck Dixon
Appreciate
and
that.
Howard Mackey, both Chuck Dixon has written a lot for DC and is arguably the best Batman run, and Howard Mackey had an amazing Ghost Rider.
Ghost Rider. Yep.
And so just if you like that and those types of characters and people coming from Marvel and DC, well, there you go. That's the best way I can sell it. And I would just like to say thank you for being on as
Ah,
well.
thank you for having me, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for the support too. Glad you're a fan.